So what is it? March 9th, 2022, third part of the Chain Gang, and I call it the prison break. And thank you so much, John, for having the orange suit on. Those of you that came late to the Hollywood Squares portion of this presentation missed that. He had a nice orange shirt because, yeah, orange is the new white is what my invitation to this session was. But let's start with this. I saw a star from heaven which had fallen to earth, and the key to the bottomless pit was given to him. That's a teaser verse, because what happens after that verse is the prison break. So these are weird angel verses. For those of you who are very familiar with that term, series of textual explications, and we want to look tonight a little bit about this one. We'll get into Psalm 2 about 2/3 of the way in. Why do the nations conspire? The peoples plot in vain. The kings of the earth rise up, and the rulers band together against the Lord and against his Messiah, word anointed there, saying, let us break their chains, throw off their shackles. And we'll get into Psalm 2 a little bit later. So remember, part 3, we're going to remember that who we're talking about here is we're talking about from part 1, and the reason we call them the Chain Gang is that these angels who sinned in Genesis 6, according to Jude and according to Peter, are now in chains of darkness. So remember that. We're going to review a bunch of stuff, but that's the most important. So how do we look at this prison situation? A lot of tonight, I'm just going to, some of the signs are important that we just talk a little bit. Have these guys fallen and they can't get up? No. They came down on their own. These are the spirits in Genesis 6. They came down on their own. They didn't fall. Okay, this is very important in biblical parlance, that you don't get the idea of quote unquote fallen angels. Well, we'll just leave it at that. They haven't happened. I don't think, unless I'm misunderstanding a few verses, that there are any quote unquote fallen angels. In other words, they find themselves down here and they don't know, I've fallen and I can't get up. Anyway, they are there in prison and they stay there forever. Whoever said that? I mean, that's what a lot of people who actually, think a little bit like we do, in the sense that they understand that the Genesis 6 sons of God were thrown into Tartarus. They're there and they're there forever, and you're never going to get out. They're never going to change. Well, we'll think about that. So Jesus visited, he visited the prison. We saw that last part 2, and he was just cruel, saying "na na boo boo" or "neener neener." That's Rob Wood's favorite. So his witness. He witnessed his resurrection to them. Why would he take the time to go down there if he was a jerk? Jesus is not a jerk. He just isn't. Well, they do their time and they get out rehabilitated forever. That's not true either. Can you say free will? Anyone can disobey God anytime, and there are consequences. Always. So they do their time, get out, and some obey, and some are still jerks. Yep, that's what it is. So I'm saying that the prison in the mind of God and the prophet is like this. There are 5 basic sentencing philosophies. I looked this up that justify why we punish those who break our criminal laws or God's criminal laws. Retribution, we're going to throw your butt in there and you're going to stay there and you're not going to get good meals. Incapacitation, we want you off the street. We don't want you killing people. Rehabilitation, which is a big deal, right? You might be able to be rehabilitated. Deterrence, yes, we want others to not do what you did, and so we're going to throw your butt in prison, and they're going to see that. That's a big deal in the Hebrew Scriptures. And then there is restoration, where you've proven yourselves holy enough to be released, or good enough. We'll use the word good enough to be released. That's a big deal too, because God knows you and he has watchers, all right? These philosophies are not esoteric theories. Rather, they come very much from our human nature and common sense. So keep it common, even though it's not so common in the world today, common sense. Well, there's a reason you're in prison, and there's a reason you might get out. So part 3, we're going to talk about the Rephaim. That's the blue thing up there. And we're going to look at Isaiah 14. For those of you who have been at my research explication nights, the last 2 of those, we're going to bring that into this session. Psalm 82, we're going to look at that. The gods were in darkness where? In Tartarus, below the earth. That's why the foundations shake. Remember this. The Eschaton and the kings of the earth and the judges of the earth, and are also called nobles. What happens to them? Leviathan is in the deep. We saw that last session. He's the king of all those in the waters. That was part of Job 41. And if you haven't listened, I went pretty fast in session 1 and 2, and I'm going to try to slow down a little tonight, but we might go a little bit over the hour because we're going to go back over a little bit of Leviathan. Then we hit, I believe, in one of my sessions on the Isaiah sessions, we looked at Revelation 9. We'll look at it again tonight. The locusts there are the locusts in Joel 2 and 3, or actually it's 1 and 2, Bob. They have to obey or they fry, basically. Their prisoners are let loose by God. They are very serious about what they do. It's a kind of like the destroyer in Egypt. He had a job to do. God said, kill them. Those that don't have the blood on the lintel, kill them. Just kill them. So, these are people that disobeyed. And then we're going to, as I said, look at Psalm 2, where they want their fetters, their chains cast off, because they're going to rebel. Can you say war in heaven? Yes. We're going to look at that again in Isaiah 14, 9 through 20. And then, of course, the end. Of course, you don't know this, of course, but I'm going to handle why Christians replace angels, because we tie in the Jude proper dwelling with our house that is coming from heaven. Same word. The house is a very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard, and if I were to quiz everybody, you'd tell me which album from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young that was. And I'll take the answers after. Okay, here we go. A little bit more about the sinning angels, chains, judgment in the great day. The dragon sinned from the beginning. We know this. 1 John 3:8. Read it. Read it over. Read it carefully. The beginning is not Genesis 6. So the devil, Satan, the dragon, that ancient serpent, if you want to quote John the Revelator, sins from the beginning. That word sinned is actually a participle in 1 John, but I had to leave it there. Just he sinned from the beginning. He didn't sin from the garden, which is after the beginning. He didn't sin from Genesis 6, which is after the beginning. And he didn't sin at Babel, that it's after the beginning. He sinned from the beginning. He messed up the original creation. We call it, now he's in house arrest because it was the original sin. It had nothing to do with Adam. Okay, those Genesis 6 dudes did it when Noah was born, what they did. So that's a time period, right? If you look at the genealogies. And that is the focus of the sin, and those that we know of that are particularly pointed out in 2 Peter 2:4 and Jude 6, that they left their first estate and God has put them in chains of darkness, under darkness, for the judgment of the great day. And that would be the day of the Lord, I'm telling you. So there was also an afterwards thing in Genesis 6. We'll look at that. And we, just so you know, the book of Enoch lists about 200 rebellious angels that did the dirty deed on Mount Hermon. Do we care? I don't know if it matters that much for biblical interpretation that somebody thought there were 200 of them. Okay, we always think it's kind of like the wise men, the magi at the birth of Jesus. Well, there was only 3 because there was only 3 gifts. They didn't travel that way, folks. There were a lot of them. So I'm thinking those rebellious angels, there were probably a bunch of them that came down. Well, these other sons of God are given nations, okay? Other sons of gods are given nations to care for, rule, and protect. That's what Psalm 82 gets into. The dudes that are in Sheol, or the abyss, are these quote-unquote leaders. They're called the he-goats of the earth. That's what the Hebrew is, he-goats. Leaders of the earth, the kings of the nations. I say this corresponds to the ruling sons of God from Deuteronomy 32:8. There it is again, who show up in darkness in Psalm 82. And we'll look at that. And how many are there? But it doesn't say. We just have to read what's written. So here we go. Remember this, Genesis 6. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also after this, the Nephilim. Okay? When the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bore children to them, those who were mighty men of old, the famous men. And so, yeah, this is groundbreaking, and it's a one-time deal, right? I don't know. If this is to be believed, if it was a one-time deal and then it was also after that one-time deal, then it ain't a one-time deal. The logic of the prophet is that there are more instances after, and it catches ear because you don't know if it's after they came down before the flood or after they came down after the flood. There's all kinds of speculation out there that, one of the daughters of Noah had the genetics of the Nephilim, or even one of the sons did. That's speculative because Noah was perfect. So I would go with the girls. And there's no way to prove it. They're absolutely, we'll get into this in a minute. I'm saying that after might be after the flood, but Nephilim means giants. That's what it means. Listen carefully. It's the Aramaic word for giants. It's not the Hebrew word for to fall. Nafal is the Hebrew verb. This isn't a verb. A Nephilim is a giant, okay? Not a fallen one. Who are the fallen ones? To answer that, nobody, because the sons of God came down on their own. So this idea of fallen, just get it out of your head. And by the way, Scripture does not call Goliath a Nephilim. We'll get into a little bit of that tonight. Okay, so who were the Rephaim? Okay, Goliath was one. There's your answer. What does it mean that he was? We're going to read 2 Samuel 21:15. Now, when the Philistines were at war again, second time, third time, who knows, with Israel, David went down and his servants with him, and they fought against the Philistines. David became weary. And then Ishbi-Benob, who was among the descendants of the giant, referring to Goliath, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels of bronze in weight and was girded with a new sword, and he intended to kill the king, right? But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, helped him and struck the Philistine and killed him. Then the men of David swore to him, saying, "You shall not go out again with us to battle, so that you do not extinguish the lamp of Israel." Now it came about after this that there was war again with the Philistines and Gob. I love the names of these places. Gob. Then Sibbecai, the Hushathite, struck down Saph, old Saph, who was among the descendants of the giant Rephaim. There was a war with the Philistines again at Gob, and Ethanon, the son of Jair, Origim, the Bethlehemite, killed Goliath the Gittite. Oh, it must be another guy, right? Goliath of Gath, a Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Who said they didn't have, maybe it was like the name Bob. There was a lot of those guys in Gath, and they were big, just like Goliath. There was a war at Gath again, and there was a man of great stature who had, here we go, 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number, and he also had been born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, struck him down. These 4 were born to the giant Rephaim in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. So Goliath had been busy. Yeah, he had. We're going to get into this word Rephaim because, by the way, this translation and just about every other translation you read, if they don't put the Rephaim in here, they're wrong, because Rephaim doesn't mean giant. And you'll see why. So, where else do we run into the Rephaim? Those of you who were in the Isaiah sessions, Sheol from beneath, this is in the middle of 14, chapter 14, 9 through 17. Sheol from beneath is excited. It's a twitter, is the Hebrew, over you, Mr. Star of the Morning, to meet you when you come. It arouses the spirits of the dead. And it's actually translated departed spirits, and should have been just left Rephaim. Spirits of the dead are just, the word is Rephaim, and that doesn't mean spirits, and it doesn't necessarily mean dead, but we'll get to that. All the leaders of the earth, that's what they were. All the kings of the nations got up from their thrones. It was an inquisition. The star of the morning, a.k.a. Lucifer, which you actually read later on, they, the Rephaim, I just stuck that in there. That's my, parenthesis there. With all, they will all respond and say to you, even you have been made weak as we. Definitely are weak. You have become like us. You wasn't like that before. Your pomp and the music of your harps has been brought down to Sheol. We're still in Sheol. They're talking to the dude, right? Maggots are spread out as a bed underneath you, and worms are your coverings. That's idiomatic. You're in the dust of the earth. You're down under where maggots and worms are, right? How have you fallen from heaven, O star of the morning? Star of the morning is the star of the morning, right? Not Lucifer. It never should have been translated Lucifer. Son of the dawn, right? You've been cut down to the earth, you who weakened the nations, but you said in your heart before that, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. It's in the mountain, way up north. It's cosmic. I did a whole series on that about 2 years ago. I will make myself like the Most High. Right? He's one of the not Most High, right? Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. Sheol, pit, abyss, the deep. All are synonymous terms for where you go when you're dead. In some instances, sometimes it's a little bit different, but the context will tell you. Those who see you will gaze at you like the Rephaim and say, they will ponder over you and say, is this the guy? Is this the guy who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world like a wilderness and overthrew its cities? Yeah, it's the guy who did not allow his prisoners to go home. This is an inquisition. I thought of like it was like the judgment at Nuremberg. This is what it is. What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. How'd you become like one of us? And then he goes on and on. If you read the context, the Rephaim are not so dead people, right? They're alive in Sheol, talking to a guy who's been thrown there. And how did he? Well, before I go to the next slide, we know how he got there. We know how the Son of the Dawn gets into Sheol. That's from Revelation 20. I can't remember when it comes up. I just want to talk about it here. When the angel that had the key to the bottomless pit grabs a chain, right? If you read Revelation 20, he grabs a chain and chains up Mr. Star and sends him down there for 1,000 years, and then he puts the cover on it. That's when this scene is, okay? And it says so in Revelation 20. Kings got up from their thrones to judge here and in that other reference section in Revelation 20. So they're the not-so-dead kings of the earth. Okay, they were once controlling things on the earth. Og, the king of Bashan, or the king of Bashan, who is called of the descendants of the Rephaim, and the star of the morning here, kings about the kings of the earth, kings of the nations. Number two, they were so famous that when they were put in Sheol, let me just preface this before I go too much further. I did a lot of work on this. It's not done. It's what I know at this point, and I'll know more, maybe next year. But they were so famous that when they were put into Sheol, whole swaths of territories were named for them. The valley of the Rephaim are in all those verses right there. The land of the Rephaim are all those verses right there. They're about half of the number of times the word Rephaim is used. It included the area of Mount Hermon, the Bashan, okay? The Bashan area. Og, king of Bashan, and Sihon, who was the king of the Amorites, maybe? I can't remember. They were both huge dudes, okay, if you read the records, and they were both stationed in the area of Bashan. Bashan is not a pleasant place. Put it in your Bibles. When you read Bashan, your ears should be listening as to what's going on in Bashan. They were the great heroes of the world. When they died, or in other circumstances, that's kind of weird when Bob says when they died. How could they die? What if they're spiritual kind of people? They die. Well, they're kings, okay, and they did die. Or in other circumstances, they were, certain of them are thrown there. They were put in Sheol, but they were not dead like humans. Like humans are dead. What does it say? They're asleep. When you die, you're dead. These guys are walking around. They're the walking dead. Oh, evidence is there. There's no resurrection for these kings. And we'll get into some of that. They're mentioned in Ugarit. Now, Ugarit's up in Syria. It's a whole bunch of writings that came from there. And Isaiah was very familiar with the writings from Ugarit. He quotes them like Jude and Enoch quote the Apocrypha in there, and Paul quotes the Apocrypha. Well, Isaiah quotes some of these things from Ugarit, and the Rephaim are huge in their writings as dead ancestors, demigods. It made me think, and it probably is very close to it, the titans of Greek traditions that come to mind. They were thrown down to Tartaros. Their traditions were built on the traditions of what we know from the ancient Near East, including the Bible. Literally, the verb rapha means to sink down, not a giant. Okay, not a giant, just someone who's sunk down or dropped down. So Rephaim, the noun might be. It's very difficult. The sunken ones, okay? You'll see a lot of times translations call them the shades, or I showed you one above, the departed spirits, because it's hard to get your fingers on this noun. The verb we get, okay, but the noun is difficult, okay? But they're below the earth, we know this. Here's a bunch of uses of it for your spiritual enrichment, enjoyment. For only Og, king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. Behold, his bedstead was freaking huge, right? Next one, the rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, gave to half the tribe of Manasseh. It was supposed to be an area given to the children of Israel, and this guy was there. And he was obstructing, can you say that? Yes. All the region of Argob. There was Gob and Argob. Concerning all Bashan, it's called the land of the Rephaim. There you go. Get a little more context. And then Joshua. So Deuteronomy, now we're in Joshua. Og, king of Bashan, had a territory, the territory of him, one of the remnant of the Rephaim, who lived in Ashtaroth and Edrei. Ashtaroth and Edrei are towns that are mentioned in Ugarit literature just the same way that they're portrayed in the Bible. Everybody knew about these guys, okay? Everybody, not just the Hebrews. Joshua 13:12, the kingdom of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, and alone was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. For Moses struck them and deposed them. Got to get them out. That's killed them all. Okay, so to understand a little bit more of the Rephaim, later in the Hebrew scriptures, it's a thing. By that I mean it was almost an idiomatic expression. Here we go, Psalm 88:10. To the dead dost thou do wonders? Do Rephaim rise? Do they thank you? Answer would be no, and probably no. Job 26, the dead, which is the word Rephaim. The Rephaim tremble where? Under the waters. And the waters, their inhabitants. So not only do the Rephaim under the waters tremble, but the inhabitants along with the Rephaim who are under the water. Sheol is naked before God, and Abaddon, destruction, has no covering. If this is making you think of the abyss with no top on it, you would be not far off, okay? Sheol is naked. What happens? Sheol has no cover. In this case, Sheol, which is, Sheol, a place, and Abaddon, which is destruction, is just parallel with it. Synonymous parallelism. I was working that with Frank earlier in the week. There's a parallelism for you right there, Frank. Proverbs 2:18, for her house hath inclined to death. This is a prostitute. And unto the Rephaim her path. It was just like, don't go there. Her house is not going, it is death. The Rephaim her path, another parallelism. It was idiomatic here. We're not trying to get doctrine from these guys. Let all who are simple come to my house, prostitute. To those who have no sense, she says, stolen water, sweet food eaten in secret is really good. But little do they know that the Rephaim are in her house. Don't go there. That her guests are deep in the realms of the dead. It's figurative here. Okay, Proverbs 21:16. Whoever strays from the path of prudence comes to rest in the company of the Rephaim. It's to keep you from doing stuff. Remember, Philippians 2:9. For this reason, God also exalted Jesus and bestowed on him a name which is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow, those who are in heaven, those on earth, and those where? Under the earth. That's where we're talking about, where the Rephaim are. Where in the future, star of the morning becomes like one of us, all right? And they're alive. Can't really bow unless you're alive, right? Revelation 5, 12, and 13 basically say the same thing. In heaven, on earth, under the earth, and in the sea. Oh, yes, I said this in session too. Give God the glory or feel the fire. Also, good dudes are in the sea as well. I'll show you that in some other session. But they're confined, let's just say. And then I said this, a month ago, to read Isaiah 13 and 14 a few times, just to get the sense of what we're talking about in the Rephaim. Oh, good. We're going to look at Psalm 82. We'll pick up some interesting information. Guess when this psalm is about? It's in the Eschaton. Psalm 82. A psalm of Asaph. And it says here, God, and that's the Hebrew word Elohim. Sorry, I had Psalm 2 on the slide before. That should be 82. The God, Elohim, and I capitalized it for you guys who are purists. It's not capitalized in the Hebrew. Has taken his place in the divine council, or it's literally the assembly of El. In the midst of the Elohim, he holds judgment. So Elyon, which he's called later down here in the red down at the bottom, it says the Most High. That's the word Elyon. So Elyon is talking to these gods and expressing his exasperation. How long will you, these dudes, right, judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah is not you idiots. It's just something that says stop reading for a second and think about it. You idiots. That doesn't mean that. Anyway, God's direct exhortation is that, look, give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute, you idiots. It should be in there every time. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. Again, exasperation, because they're his sons. How do we know they're his sons? Because of the next verse. This is God in his head, right? They have neither knowledge or understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you're God's sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince or leader. That's the word leader. And at the end of this psalm, O God, arise, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. That'll come up again in Psalm 2. Just notice a couple things here. They're walking about in darkness. Where do you think that just might be? Because they've already gone to Sheol. You know, the foundations of the earth are shaken. Why? Because they're under it, and they're walking around in darkness. And this just constructs here are incredible. How they thought about these lovely beings that are in darkness and chains. Okay, here's my. This is what I do oftentimes. Make a slide that makes me think. Now, the sons of God, to whom? Elyon, the Most High. He's talking to them, right? They seem to be in the hearing range of the council, but maybe not in the group. And why? Because they're walking in darkness. Where would that be? Can you say Tartarus, the place of darkness? Yes, and here we see the walking dead. It said they walk in darkness. I had to put that in there. Now, in Isaiah 14, they're the talking dead. Here, they're the walking dead. The foundations of the earth are shaken. Why is that significant? Well, because they're under the ground, okay? And then the fifth one, rise, O God, referring to Jesus. Is it significant? Yeah. Arise is the standard word to get up off the throne, basically get up. You'll see it all the time related to a king and God and Jesus. And he's what? He's next to the throne, and he's got to get up, what? To get the kingdom. Daniel 7. It is found elsewhere in Scripture. Where? Hebrews 1:8, Psalm 45. If you read the commentary in the REV, it's very well done at Hebrews 1:8. So write that down. Jesus has become so much better than the angels. That's why he's an O God. Why is he called an O God? Well, it's not just because he's a nice guy and he's magically become a capital G-O-D. No. And he's not a member of the Trinity, okay? He's better than the angels, but some of the angels are the small G-O-D. It's a category of created beings, okay? Jesus, is the head of all principality and power. He's so much better than the angels. He's got a better name that they've got, a blah, 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 blah. He's a God. He's a God, okay? But he's not a member of the Trinity. Get that out of your heads. There's reasons for the Hebrew writings to use terminology like this. So, well, we finally got to part 3. How do they get out? Oh my, funny you should ask that. Let's go. Isaiah 24:21. This has got to be before we get into answering that. On that day, okay, what day is that? That's used 45 times, that phrase, that day, in Isaiah alone. I think there's 250 times. A fifth of them are in Isaiah. You know what day he's talking about. It's the day of the Lord. Why? Because the Lord will punish the host of heaven. Where are they? In heaven. It's just not a peaceful place up there all the time. And it's going to get worse because in that day, there's a war and the Lord is going to punish them in heaven up there. Remember, there will be blood. And because that's in Isaiah, I think it's 34. And the kings that punish the host of heaven on earth and the kings of the earth on the earth. That's a parallelism there. They're the same. What did I say? Standard. These are angelic beings, folks. Isaiah 24, 22, and 23. And they have been gathered, a gathering of the bound ones in a pit, have been shut up in prison, and after a multitudes of days are inspected, or the REV has visited right there, and confounded, blushed, hath been the moon. Why? Because it turns red. Remember that? Confounded, it's the word blushed in Hebrew. Confounded. I don't know why they didn't translate it that way. It's so rich, right? The moon's blushing here. And why? Because, after a few days in the prison, they're going to be visited, and ashamed hath been the sun, right? Because it goes dark. There is no sun and the moon's turned to blood. Sound like Joel? Yeah, it does. For reigned hath Jehovah the host in Mount Zion, and in Jerusalem, and over against his evildoers, there's going to be honor. All the verbs in here are are perfect, And I call them prophetic perfect because they ain't happened yet. Not in Isaiah's time and not yet in our time. You'll know when these guys in prison have been visited. You'll see this coming up. Most people are sent to prison to be rehabilitated. Does this somehow change because God sends errant angels there? Sons of God and others? Hey, look, they're not just the big dudes. And I call sons of God the big dudes. And yet, of course, the star of the morning, he's even bigger. He's the biggest. He's in Sheol. He's going to be down there in prison because he's got chains around him. Those guys in Luke that asked Jesus not to send them to the abyss, they were probably a daimon or daimonion, and we think of them as so much smaller, but they also could be there. Because why would he ask Jesus not to send them if he couldn't? Well, we don't know if he could or he couldn't because the text doesn't tell us. There's no need for speculation except to know that they thought they could. All right. The attitude of most Christians is that everything is set in stone on the astral plane. There's good angels and bad angels. That's it. No change. Cannot change, especially the bad ones. They're going to be bad forever. And here's a quote I read this week. Their lot appears to be fixed, and the scheme of redemption and no scheme of redemption exists for them. Can you not read how many sessions, how many verses have I shown you in 3 sessions, an hour long apiece, that there is redemption? Why send them to prison? Why send Jesus to witness to them? Witness of scriptures is totally opposite. Totally. There is hope until there isn't. Until you make the decision to stay out of prison. Boy, I'm making a lot of rhymes here today. Clarify a few more things. From part 2. What? My goodness, I'm only on what slide? 21 of 60. Move it up, Bob. Picture of hell, how we got there. We'll do a review. You can die or you can be thrown to hell. There's maybe more ways. I don't know. I know the 2. Gates of hell are really those. Remember the gates of hell from part 2. They shall not prevail against Jesus' church. And I say here the gates of hell will not prevail against it is really the hate. The gates of hell will not withstand it. The church. Heiser thinks here Jesus' church is the aggressor. Okay, and they attack either way, will not prevail or will not withstand. Jesus' church wins. By the way, Jesus' church isn't us. Whose church are we? Every time the word church is referenced to be someone's in the epistles, it's God's. Jesus isn't God, okay? Jesus' church is in heaven. It's the assembly, Hebrews 12, the assembly of the holy ones. That would be them angels up there that he's convincing to be on God's side. Why? Because he got raised from the dead, just like he went to hell to show them, he goes up to heaven and shows them. Okay, the gates of hell in some teachings, most particularly Heiser's, he thinks it's a place name. I don't think that. Mount Hermon, the area of Panias, which was very, very, pagan and had all kinds of, gross things happening. The god Pan is where we get the word Panias. He was a nasty dude. This has some merit, but biblically, it's the people held by the gates. Okay, the gates of hell will not gates don't prevail. Okay, but the people that are held by the gates could maybe in some other world, right? Jesus' church is not God's church. I just said that. Remember, it's in heaven. God's church is us. 8 times in Scripture, the church of God. So Matthew 16:18 is not about the church in the dispensation of the secret, because Jesus not only didn't know about it, he was talking about something more spiritual. Okay? So in Leviathan chapter 41 of Job, roams the abyss with other entities. He's under house arrest. He's in the waters above and below the firmament. So now some pictures. You remember the picture I gave you 2 times ago of what Sheol is like, and gave you a few things about the shaft of Sheol, and Lucifer is going to be going down into Tartarus, and in Revelation 20 and in Isaiah 14, right? The idea of the bottomless pit. So I gave you, here's a better one. I made a better one. It's the same thing, except it's extended to show you that they thought of the pit as, well, a pit that kept going. Sheol is like a cistern that keeps going, opening its mouth, right? That term is used about Sheol opened his mouth, I think, in the rebellion of Korah. It's a really scary concept in the ancient Near East that it was bottomless. We can't think of that because we know this isn't really. It's a construct for the Hebrews. It's not for us, but it just keeps going. How does it keep going? It just keeps going. I'll go back one. There's the water above. Well, there's water above and below the Hebrew world. And Sheol is the lower part of, Tartaros, the prison where the prisoners are, is the lower part of Sheol. I think I've showed you that in part 2, like way too many times. And then here's my last one. This is another conception, and I threw Sheol in there, and it just keeps going, right? The underworld, Job 26, he stretches out the north over the void. The word void is tohu from Genesis 1-2. Over the, bohu, I guess it is, without form and void. Over the void, and it hangs the earth on nothing. But there's all kinds of water around it. And then in Bob's, the mind of Minolta, Bob's conception, and those of you who have read Lord of the Rings, remember when Gandalf and the Balrog fell through the great chasm and they landed in the subterranean waters, according to the Lord of the Rings. This was a really great scene if you saw it in the movie number 2. It's really important in the Bible, right? No, but I really like the books, and it made me think of this because it made me think of the scene where it's all physical, right? But so what's below the water? What's holding up the water? There's no concept. It's bottomless, right? But there is water. So we're not going to know exactly what they thought until we quiz David, Daniel, Isaiah. So what did you mean by this? What did you mean? Oh, Job. Will my hope go down to the bars of Sheol? What did you really mean by that, Job? Shall we descend into the dust? I don't know. It also had chords. Sheol had chords, right? Samuel, this is David, by the way, it's 2 Samuel 22 or Psalm 18, exact same words here. The cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. It's a figure. It's meant to scare the crap out of you. Don't go into the prostitutes because you're going to go down to Sheol and be really close to the Rephaim. All right. Both good and bad go to Sheol, right? Because when you die, you go to hell. You literally go to hell. But there's a lower part where the angels who sinned, are put behind bars and are alive, reserved unto judgment. This idea recognized everywhere. But in the Bible, we have the true witness of exactly what happens, right? At least construct-wise. Is there a place down below the earth? No. But they didn't know that, okay? It's happening to those beings in the Eschaton that are thrown there, right? The idea remains part of the conversational life of David here in Samuel and the writer of Job above. It's just part of their concepts, their constructs, like heaven is up, hell is down, there's a prison in the lower part of Sheol, okay? Let's go over the Leviathan, the king, just again, because I know some of you missed it the second time I went over it. He's the king over, and it used to be all the sons of pride in the Hebrew, but then we actually read a better version of the Septuagint, right? Of the Leviathan, the dragon, raises himself up, and the mighty, the Elim, another word for the gods, fear, okay? You've read Elohim. Well, this is just missing a vav. It's another word for the gods. A lot of translations have the mighty. Well, no, he's a god, okay? He's a god. And when he raises himself up, that nasty dude, the rest of them freak out because of the crashing. They are bewildered. What's that? It's actually the crashing of the waves, but shortened form of Elohim. Here we are, the next section of the Masoretic text, but shortened and changed a bit in the Septuagint. We'll get to it, but I want to read the Masoretic. The sword that reaches him cannot avail, nor the spear, the dart, the javelin. He regards iron as straw. Is this Is this a crocodile? No, but I was taught it was a crocodile. Stupid professors. Bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Slingshots are turned into stubble for him. Clubs are regarded as stubble. He laughs at the rattling of the javelin. His underpants, no, underparts. He didn't have underpants. Come on. His underparts are like sharp potsherds. Oh, it could be underwear. Who knows? He spread out like a threshing sled on the mire. Okay, here we go to the last four verses. In the Masoretic text, he makes the depths. The depths, what's the depths? Boil like a pot. It's above and below. So he makes the sea like a jar of ointment. There's your parallelism again, Frank. Behind him, behind Leviathan or Hydra, he makes a wake to shine. What's the author of Job doing? He's looking up at the constellation Hydra. One would think the deep would be gray-haired. Can you say Milky Way in our parlance? Yes. If you get in a clear sky out in the middle of Wyoming, yes, the deep, what they thought was the water above the firmament at night appears to be gray-haired. Nothing on Earth is like him. So he wasn't a dinosaur. And he's not on Earth. Nothing on Earth is like him. One made without fear. He looks on everything that is high. He's the king of all the sons of pride. Well, the Septuagint, even better, more sense. He makes the deep boil like a brazen cauldron. Think about it. He regards the sea as a pot of ointment. There's your parallelism. Lowest parts of the deep. And I've given you the Greek there. Ton de tartaron tes abusu. That's the Tartaros of the abyss. Got it? You see how much sense it makes? As a captive. Let me read it again. And the lowest part of the deep as a captive, this is Leviathan, he reckons the deep as his range. Walkabout place is what the Greek means. They're a covered walkway. Guess what? That's his range. There's nothing on earth like him. That was okay. Formed to be mocked by, sported with is more properly mocked by. I don't know why they did this. Maybe it meant in 1800s when this translation was done. Maybe sported by means mocked by. He was formed to be mocked by my angels. When will that happen? In the Eschaton. He beholds every high thing, and he is king of all that are in them waters. Got it? This is a great translation, okay? The concept of imprisonment, especially the dragon and his minions helpless of Rehab in other contexts, is from the earliest traditions of Judaism. Job is not the oldest book physically or historically, but the constructs, the idioms, the thought patterns, the worldview are all from the period of Genesis 1 through 11, right? Before God, chooses Israel at Babel. It's just not written down until the Babylonian captivity. Those of you who want to be technical, the book of Job has got a lot of Aramaisms, but they're from the imperial Aramaic of Babylon. I had to study that in my advanced Hebrew classes at the prestigious McCormick Seminary. Not only is the dragon imprisoned in the lowest parts of the sea, the deep, the abyss, but he's also king of all those in the waters, right? That's his job. He was given the kingship by Adam. This lines up with other contexts, right? There are those in the water, very powerful beings. They appear to be subjects to the king. It also, some of them, not all, it also shows the original kingship of God given to humans is in his hands. We know that from Jesus in the gospel. Lower parts of the earth, lower parts of Sheol. I think there's only one slide here, I hope. Isaiah 44. Sing, O heavens, for the Lord hath done it. Shout, lower parts of the earth. Break forth into singing, you mountains. See the lower parts of the earth? That's equivalent to the mountains. The mountains, not only did they stick up above the clouds, their roots, you'll read the roots of the mountains sometimes in the Hebrew, they go deep, okay, lower parts of the earth. The singing, the shouting, the breaking forth into singing, that's all parallel. The the recipient or the person that's supposed to be singing, "O ye heavens," that's angels. Lower parts of the earth, those are the beings that are alive there. That would be, we'll just call them generally Rephaim. And they break forth into singing. The mountains, well, can the mountains have a mouth? No, it's a figure of speech. We'll call it personification because they're singing, but mountains are, they're kind of not able to sing. Then he says, "O forest and every tree therein, do this." In other words, there should be another, you're understanding when I put the word "do this," there should be another singing verb there, but it's not. It's an ellipsis, which is another figure of speech. "The Lord hath redeemed Jacob, glorified himself in Israel." This is in the Eschaton, because in the middle, before God glorifies himself in Israel, before he redeemed Jacob's, all hell breaks loose on earth. Okay? Deuteronomy 32:22. "For a fire is kindled in my anger and burns" where? "To the lowest part of hell," which is Tartarus, the Tartarus of the abyss, right? "Consumes the earth with its yield and sets the fire, the foundations of the mountains." There it is right there. This is the truth written by Moses, but by the time Proverbs is writing, it's kind of idiomatic, okay? Think about the first 5 books are kind of doctrinal, and then the wisdom literature and a lot of the prophets become more practical. Okay, since there is a lower part of hell, Proverbs 9:18 says, "But he, the naive man, does not know that the Rephaim are there, that her, the woman of folly's guests, they're in her house, in her bed, in the depths of Sheol." It's pretty cool to look how God patterned this stuff. More pictures. I just wanted to show you Tartarus again, and the circle of the earth and the firmament. I've showed this before. The waters of the great deep, they're not just below, they're above, and the earth is hung on nothing. Nobody tries to figure out how the water's kept in a big circle or a big globe, right? All right. And then my famous map, a little, again, for the PDF if you want it. All these are tied to Scripture. All these are constructs. There's Sheol in the middle, the mouth of Sheol. I've given you references, the pit, the abyss, Sheol, blah, blah, blah. Look, who gets up from the dead? Not just humans. Kings of the earth, Isaiah 26. Your dead will live. That's the word mut. So the dead, that's the human dead. Their corpses will rise. You who lie in the dust awake and shout for joy. Yea, we made it. Jesus raised us from the dead. For your dew is as the dew in the dawn. And, maybe I should have made that big and blue. The earth will give birth to the departed spirits. How about that? Come, my people, enter into your rooms for a little while and close your doors behind you. There it is. Hide for a little while until indignation runs its course. Where are we? We're in the Eschaton, most likely getting into the time of Jacob's trouble because God's pissed off. For behold, the Lord is about to come out from his place. You go into your place because he's coming out of his to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. He kills a lot of people. What? The inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth will reveal her bloodshed and will no longer cover her slain. You got to take your medicine, folks. Psalm 2. Here's a fun psalm. Why are the nations in an uproar and the peoples devising a vain thing? Here we go. The kings of the earth take their stand. They're getting up off of their thrones. They take a stand. It's not like we think. It's not like it's well, let me just read. The kings of the earth take their stand. The rulers, parallel, take counsel. Where? Together against the Lord and against his anointed. That's I've given you the great Hebrew, the Mashiach, Messiah. One of the few places in the Bible where you get Mashiach. There's just not that many. We think there is, but there's not. These guys they're going to take their stand and take counsel. They're going to talk about this, right? They're going to have their own counsel. Where is it? Oh, you'll see. Let's tear their fetters apart and cast their cords away from us. Their counsel's in Sheol. Why? Because that's where they're chained up. That's where they're bound. This is not figurative language like we're all bound up on the inside. It's literally, they had constraints. Literally, they were bound up in chains. They were bonded, the ropes of Sheol. Remember that? A few, slides above. Lines up with the angels who sinned and have chains. Yes, God on his throne, who sits, there it is, he sits in the heavens. He laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. Why? Because he can. Then he will speak to them. How? In his anger, and terrify them in his fury. This will happen, saying, for me, I've installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. I will surely tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, you're my son, today I've begotten you, right? And ask of me, God, Mr. Messiah, ask of me, and I will give you the nations for the Messiah's inheritance, and the very ends of the earth is your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall shatter them. Oh, he's a nice guy, like earthenware. Here's Psalm 89 again. Just throw it in there to remind you. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit the nations. Exactly the same mind picture. This action takes place in the book of Revelation. I've given you these three references, and is yet to come, just like it was yet to come in Psalm 2, Psalm 82, verse 10 of Psalm 2. Now, therefore, oh, you stupid kings, show some discernment. These are the kings of the earth who are bound. We know they're the Rephaim. Take warning, O judges of the earth. Parallel again, Frank. Worship the Lord with reverence. Rejoice with trembling. I could take you through the Hebrew here and show you how beautifully it's set up. Sometimes it's even rhyming, not here in English, but in Hebrew. Do homage, or the word kiss, the Son, that he not become angry and you perish in the way. What is perish? It's the word destroy. For his wrath may soon be kindled. How blessed are all who take refuge in him. Those in chains at this very time will be loosed. Here we go. Whoops, got to go back up. Revelation 9. I've shown this to you once. We're going to go slower here. I don't even know, but we'll just keep going until I'm done here, folks, if you don't mind. Just turn to 9 o'clock. Then the fifth angel, Revelation 9, folks, fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven which had fallen to earth, and the key to the bottomless pit was given to him. How'd he get that? I don't know. It's not in here. He opened the pit. I think he was on assignment, but you can hold that in abeyance. He opened the pit, all right? He wasn't allowed to stay in heaven, but he's allowed to come on earth, and he had an assignment. Open the pit. Smoke went up out of the pit, smoke as of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. And then out of the smoke, why is there smoke? Well, you'll see. Out of the smoke came locusts upon the earth, and there was power given to them as scorpions of the earth have power. They were told, you see here how they had assignments? They were told, and this is God. I'm telling you right now, these are guys that are wanting to do the truth again. They've been let out of the pit. They were told, don't hurt the grass, no green thing, nor any tree, but only smoke, no pun intended, the men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not permitted, see that? To kill anyone, but to torment for 5 months. This is like the destroyer. Kill the people without the stuff on the doorposts. This is the same attitude, okay? Nasty job assignment. It's a dirty job. Mike Rowe would be proud. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. You've got scorpions, you've got locusts. And in those days, men will seek death and not find it. They will long to die. Death flees from them. Now, pay attention. The appearance of scorpions was like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads appeared to be crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. This is just freaking weird. Don't try to figure it out. I'm just reading. They had hair like John understood it, and I'll show you why, but they had hair like the hair of a woman, teeth like the teeth of lions, breastplates like the breastplate of iron. The sound of their wings, because they're still locusts, was like the sound of chariots and many horses rushing to battle. They have tails like scorpions and stings, and in their tails, their power to hurt men for 5 months. We just read that. They have a king over them. Oh, no, really? Why would that be? Well, they're the kings of the earth, right? But there's one dude over him, the angel of the abyss, the guy that got the key. His name in the Hebrew, we read this earlier, destroyer, Abaddon. The Greek has Apollyon. So big deal, Bob. Funky words, funky, really weird mind pictures. I ain't reading this to my kids. Well, read Joel with me. Joel 2. Blow a trumpet in Zion. Sound an alarm where? In my holy mountain, says God. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. Surely it is near, the day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. As the dawn is spread over the mountain, so there was a great mighty people. That kind of people. What kind of people? I know. There was never anything like it, nor will they be again, nor will there be again after it. To the years of many generations. That means forever. Fire consumes before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the garden in Eden before them, but in the desolate wilderness behind them. And nothing, you read that? Nothing at all escapes them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses. What does that sound like? Locust horses. They're like war horses, so they run. With the noises of chariots, they leap on the tops of mountains, like the crackling of a flame of fire consuming the stubble, like a mighty people arranged for battle. That's the second time we've seen a mighty people. Verse, whatever it is above, I guess it's verse. I can't see. Before them, the people are in anguish. You think all the faces turn pale. They run like mighty men. Why? Well, they climb a wall like soldiers. They each march in a line. They do not deviate from their paths. They do not crowd each other. They march everyone in his path. Why is Joel cranking away at this crazy mind picture? I will show you. When they burst through the defenses, they do not break ranks. They rush on the city. They run on the wall. They climb into houses. They enter through the windows like a thief. Are you getting a mind picture here? For before them the earth quakes, the heavens tremble, the sun and the moon grow dark, the stars lose their brightness. The Lord utters his voice before whose army? This is his army. Wacky army. Surely his camp is very great. That would be like, what do they call that? The place, the bivouac. Anyway, for strong is he who carries out his word. Speaking of this army, strong is he who carries out his word. You're not permitted to touch anything green. You're not permitted to do this. You follow exactly what I say, or you're dead. I filled in the ellipsis. The day of the Lord is indeed great and very awesome. Who can endure it? Well, look where we are. Joel 2:1. Guess what's on either side of that yellow part, which I call Joel 2. Joel 1. The word of the Lord came to Joel, son of Pethuel. Hear this, O elders, listen, all inhabitants of the land. Has anything happened in your days or in the days of your father or your father's days? Tell your sons about it. Let your sons tell their sons and their sons tell the next generation what the gnawing locust has left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust has left, the creeping locust has eaten. When the creeping locust has left, the stripping locust has eaten. Okay, that's great, Bob. Well, here's the other side of that slide previous, Joel 2:23. So rejoice, O sons of Zion, and be glad the Lord your God, for he has given you the early rain for your vindication. He has poured down you down for you the rain. The early and the latter rain is before the threshing floor, so it will be full of grain, and the vats will overflow with the new wine and oil. Then I will make up for you the years that can you see that? The years that the swarming locust has eaten, the creeping and the stripping locust and the gnawing locust, my great army which I sent among you. You will have plenty to eat and be satisfied. Praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you, sons of Zion, believers. Then my people will never be put to shame. Thus will you know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God. There is no other. My people will never be put to shame. There you go, folks. There they are. Found the greatest picture. They do not crowd each other. They march everyone in their path. They crawl up the sides of buildings. If you haven't seen it, Google locusts. They crawl up the sides of buildings. They engulf a tree from top to bottom. That's what they do. And this is the description of the army let out of the abyss to do God's will. Strong is he that does his word. They better continue in their strength because they still have free will. A locust has free will. Weird. The rebellion. What rebellion? Angels rebel. We're getting near the end, folks. But a few more slides. The first rebellion was the dragon. We know that. Kings of the earth and the waters. This is kind of not a throwaway slide. You can read it at your own convenience. The rebellion is shown everywhere that people go against the words of God's opposites, his command, his precepts, his laws. Do your own thing, right? It shows arrogance, high-mindedness, an idea that your way is better than God's, okay? The kings of those who are in the waters, Leviathan, did just that. He rebelled. God was going to have a beautiful creation, and he let all the water loose, okay? And he remains under house arrest. Where? Above the firmament. That's day 2 in a nutshell. That's why day 2 is not good. It's never shown. It's the only day of creation that's not good. Powerful and conceited, he's not stupid. Don't fall for that. He has a plan, and he's got an army. Okay? I've given you this before. The devil has sinned from the beginning. Christians have, tuned out the aspect of angelic rebellion and the fact that there are bad angels, right? We have only the picture of the fluffy pink pootie, the harp-playing, hallmark card-adorning fat cherubs, pitchfork-wielding little devil, and the long red tail thing with horns. Oh, yeah. One sitting on one shoulder, the other sitting on the other shoulder, giving advice. That's our picture of, angels and devils, And I told somebody, oh, my Lord. See, I changed it to, oh, my Lord. It's not, oh, my God. Oh, my Lord, people, wake up and read your Bible. Golly, you're going to get so smacked on the side of your head if you don't understand where his devices. We are not ignorant of his devices unless we believe stupid things like fat cherubs. The devil's nature has been obscured from the beginning, and we don't need to read the book about him. We're supposed to be not ignorant of his methods, devices, and yet succumb to all the visuals we see, including Bob. Sorry. I'm trying to give you the correct one, right? But not the medieval pootie and the cherubs and the smiling dudes and the fat pink things. All the tales you've been told. Can you say Angels in America or even Supernatural, where they're killing demons with shotguns? Oh, please. And we even celebrate our stories of having been helped by angels unaware, and that's where it stops. That's as far as we get. It's got to go further. I told somebody the other day, I was about to say, the next series might be angels. Devils are angels too. That's going to be the weird angel verse maybe next research night. We're going to go into a few of things where devils are angels too, and it matters, see how Jesus dealt with devils. Okay, so the next rebellion. There was the first one with Leviathan. A war is coming. There will be blood. Revelation 12, she gave birth to a son. This whole thing, male child. Revelation 12 is the astral prophecy about Jesus's birth, and Virgo and Hydra, all right, who, she gave birth to the son. This is where I want you to chronologically in your head. She gave birth to Jesus, right? who was to rule the nations with a rod of iron. Her child was caught up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness. We have a break there. Okay, he's up in heaven, sitting, to God, next to God's throne. And then the woman fled to the wilderness. It changes right within a verse here. The woman is Israel, basically. Fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared for her by God so that she would be nourished for 1,260 days. This is the period in the Daniel 70 years that's also called 42 months, time and a half a time, or here, 1,260 days. It's 3.5 years of Daniel 7, okay? Verse 7, and there was a war in heaven, okay? Michael and his angels waging war against the dragon. This is not in the beginning, is it? We're past the beginning. We're into the 1,260 days, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels waging war. The dragon and his angels waged war. And they were not strong enough, and there was no longer place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was what? Tossed out, thrown down. And we say in Isaiah, how are you fallen from heaven? So put those two together. The serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, the dragon, serpent of old, which is, we can read that in Isaiah 27:1, who deceives the whole world. That's his job, the deceiver. That's the word in there. Who deceives is the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and he became an earthly kind of guy, a big king. His angels were thrown down with him. And then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now, and not until then, salvation, power, kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, he who accuses them before God day and night, because he's still in heaven before he's thrown down. And he's an active son of a bitch. Okay, Isaiah 34, I said I was going to read you this. Draw near, O nations, and hear, and listen, O peoples. Let the earth and all that contains hear, the world and all that springs from it. The Lord's indignation, tie that together with the earlier indignation verse I gave you, is against what? The nations. And his wrath against all of their armies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has given them over to slaughter, so their slain will be thrown out, and their corpses will give off their stench, and the mountains will be drenched with their blood, and all the host of heaven will wear away. The sky will be rolled up like a scroll, because in their heads it could be. It was hard. It was a firmament. So this really fits the construct of a hard firmament above their heads. The sky is going to be rolled up like a scroll. Their host, the host of heaven, see that right above it, will also wither away as a leaf withers from a vine. They'll fall as one withers from a fig tree. For here it is, my sword. This is God's sword. Maybe it's Jesus's because he's given him this kind of command, but let's just read it as God. My sword is satiated in heaven. Behold, it shall descend for judgment upon Edom and the people whom I've devoted for destruction. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. In heaven, on earth, it's satiated with fat, and with the blood of lambs and goats, because he's going to slaughter them with the fat of kidneys of rams. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Basra, great slaughter in the land of Edom, which is the Hebrew word for red. Thessalonians. Got to read this. We're getting to the Christian side of it. Almost. Now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our assembling to meet him. Gathering together, rapture. It's the word gathering together to meet him. We beg you, brethren, not to be quickly shaken or in mind or excited either by spirit or by word. Don't let any of those angels come down and start talking to you. Read the word. All right? Not by spirit, not by word, nor letter from purporting to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord is coming. Why? Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless there is a rebellion first. Then the man of, this could be sin, but here it's lawlessness, is revealed, son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat Oh, he thinks he's God. I will sit in the seat of God, in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. Okay, love this. Okay, I want you to read this. Psalm 68:18 has to do with this rebellion. Thou, and I handled this completely in part 2. Thou didst descend the high mountain. He ascended on high, leading captives in your train and receiving gifts among men. All right, it's the word ba'adam, with men or among men. What kind of men would he get gifts from if he's going to ascend on high? He's in heaven, and he's even among or in the face of the rebellious ones. He's received gifts from God. Another version had gifts from God, that the Lord may dwell there. That's really a bad translation. Why did I give you a better one? This is the scene that Paul quotes in Ephesians, where he says, he that ascended is the same one that also, or descended is the same one that also ascended high above the earth. And then Paul puts it on its ear and says, Jesus gave gifts among men, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, teachers, blah, blah, blah. The scene's in heaven because this is where the psalmist and Paul put it. The rebellious are there. Jesus got gifts up there in their face, is literally what the Hebrew says. That's what the word, I didn't highlight it very, very well, but the word af at the end there, in the face of the stubborn ones. Okay, the rebellious are already there, and they're waiting to go with war against Elyon. Okay, we're almost done. Christians are going to replace these guys that are fallen. We're considering the stuff in Jude. The angels did not keep their position, the own archon, their own beginning, their own origin, but left their proper dwelling, that's okterion, their sphere or domain, having been kept by him in eternal change. That's God in the nether gloom until the judgment of the great day. There's okterion, right? It's a dwelling place. It's oikos is the word for house. Okay, that's why it can be a habitation, a place, a sphere in this case. Okay, well, look at this. 2 Corinthians 5, 1 and 2. We love 2. For we know that if the earthly tent of our home, I've highlighted the green there for those Greek heads, is torn down, we have a building from God, an oikodomes, not okterion. We'll get to that. We have an earthly house. What is that? That's our present body. For indeed, in this house, our earthly body, verse 2, halfway down, we groan, longing to be what? Clothed with our dwelling from heaven. Okay, in the green there, in this house, pink, we groan, wanting to be clothed with, that's the gray, our dwelling from heaven. The orange, okterion, humon, our dwelling, same word that the angels left their heavenly dwelling, and we're going to be clothed with a heavenly dwelling, a dwelling from, literally, out of heaven, inasmuch as having put it on, we're not going to be found naked. Well, that's pretty damn good, right? So my contention is, at this point in my bodily life, him 50 years in, right? I think we meet the Lord Jesus in the air. The dragon is thrown out of heaven with his angels. We might pass. I'm going to put the word might, pass as ships in the night. Not so sure. But now after the rapture, it's not the time of great tribulation. As we noted, the woman, Israel, is in the wilderness for 1,260 days. She had a place prepared there, nourished. That doesn't sound like tribulation. It's not. The tribulation is the second half of Daniel's 7 years. The first half, it's kind of nice, right? But it's not the tribulation. It's not the dispensation, of the tribulation that we've always been taught. There's no tribulation dispensation. There's only 3 in the Bible. Because the one after Christians dispensation, right? The Christianity, the dispensation of the secret is the dispensation of the fullness of time from Ephesians 1. There's only this one that we're in, the one that's after it, and the one that was before it. The times are still being talked about, And there are 3.5 years after the woman is nourished, as well as the 3.5 years that she's okay. All right. This is not the time of Jacob's trouble in the beginning, because it doesn't seem to have started yet, but it does come quickly. Michael Lewis should teach on this, about how after the two witnesses in Revelation get quote unquote killed, they don't get killed because they get raised, then all hell breaks loose. So this is something from a book I'm writing, chapter 3. So just bear with me. It's the last slide. Chapter 3, I've shown that the purpose of the ages was what it was, which is to destroy the works of the devil, right? And what God, through the agency of Jesus Christ, intends to do. In the end of the end times, Jesus does this with the powerful army, a literal campaign from Sinai through the Holy Land, ending in the Valley of Decision. That's Joel 3. Christians get to participate in that war because we will get our lovely house from heaven, and it's a very, very fine house. And how do we know this? In chapter 5 of the book that I've written, I began to give the answer. The simple response is that the rapture and afterwards, we will be with him, right? There's all those lovely verses, body like unto his glorious body, blah, blah, blah. And we go where he goes, right? You will be with him forever. First to heaven to be in the presence of God, back to earth when God, again, brings the firstborn into the world. All right, that's Jesus, right? Into the inhabited world, Hebrews 1:6. The most important verses listed here are 1 Thessalonians 4:17. We will always, pantote, at all times, be with the Lord. We will also reign with him, 2 Timothy 2:12, on the earth. That's a shocker. John the Revelator says Christians will be kings and priests unto God. It's getting big, folks. In your head, I hope it's getting big. So that's the third part of the Chain Gang as they break out of prison, participate in God's locust army, crazy stuff. And you can read Joel. Joel will it'll make your head spin, but it is Bible stuff. And I know that these sessions are kind of crazy stuff, but they're really very good things to read about, because in the end, we will be with the Lord and in his army and take care of business. So thank you for coming.